The Drum Candy podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome into episode 11 of season 4 of the Drum Candy podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week's guest is Denis. Connor is the drummer with the band Beartooth, and he's been touring with them for a number of years, and he's a young man with a pretty long career as a touring musician, so we talk a bit about his life getting into this business, managing home life and touring, and he's also a gearhead, so we dig a little bit into gear and his love of Gretsch drums. It's a real fun hang, so let's get to it with Denis.
We got to talk about the space you're in. Is this a new room here? What do you got going on?
Yeah, so this is a spare bedroom at my house. So I moved last year, and I'm kind of in a temporary spot right now. So it's pretty small, and as you can see, I just have a ton of drums crammed in here.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. I almost can't even, you can hardly walk in here. But yeah, I'm supposed to be moving soon and hopefully building out another appropriately sized space. So yeah, but this one's been good to me.
Man, so you are fresh off a rather long run with Beartooth. Do you have an extensive to-do list, or how do you prepare to come off the road? You got to have so much stuff waiting for you.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, we were just on the tour that I just saw you on. We were on the road for about 8 weeks, which is definitely longer than a typical tour for us. But yeah, like you said, I came home and just had a ton of stuff waiting for me. So it's I find it kind of impossible to appropriately prepare for, everything that I've got going on at home. But yeah, I've been home for about a week now, but we just had to fly out to do something else for the band. So then I had to, our time home isn't even we were supposed to have a month, but we just had to fly out to do some music videos and stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy right now. I'm trying to adjust, but I'm all over the place. I don't know what time zone my body is in. It's just kind of craziness right now.
And you're literally going back out in a couple weeks?
Yeah. So on July 18th. So yeah, we got 2.5 weeks, and we do Australia and Europe.
Oh, wow. And how long does that run?
That runs about a month long, so that one's not too bad. Australia should be fairly easy and cool, and we don't go there too often, so it's still always exciting to go there. Not that it's not exciting to go to the other places, but we do Europe twice a year. So, but we're doing those summer festivals over in Europe, and so those are always fun.
Is there a fall winter break? What is Beartooth's cycle? Is it nonstop, or what do you guys do?
Yeah, so we are off after that Europe tour. We're off for the rest of the year, so we'll have the majority of September, October, November, all of October through December. We're completely off, and I think we have one show in September. Yeah, it changes every year, but typically we'll kind of have a big chunk of touring somewhere in the middle of the year. We did kind of the same cycle last year, where from February to August, we were kind of just nonstop, just with little 2-3 week breaks in between tours. And then we had the end of the year off, and that's kind of what we're doing again this year. It just varies based on, what tour offers come through and what makes sense. But yeah, this year's been pretty brutal. So
I didn't realize how long you've been touring, because you're a young man, you're in mid-20s, but is it true that you started touring when you were 16?
Yeah. So I started touring on a local band DIY level when I was 15, and I started doing it more professionally when I was 17. So when I was 17 is when I started touring internationally and doing it the first couple of years, it was 9-10 months a year, which was pretty ridiculous. But yeah, that's so I've been doing it full time for almost a decade now.
So you literally don't know any other way of life.
Oh, yeah. This is it. I've spent my whole adult life doing this. So,
does it feel more normal to be on the road now then?
This is going to sound hilarious because of what you just pointed out, but I'm a total homebody, man. So like, I love being at home. But yeah, like when COVID happened, and obviously we didn't tour for almost 2 years, it was like very eye-opening to how used to being on the road I am. And it was, I was excited to be at home, but it felt so weird. Like I didn't know what to do with myself being home for more than a couple months at a time. And that really pointed out to me like, oh yeah, this is my mind and body is just so used to being on the road at least half the year.
Do you maintain your kind of road chops when you're off, or do you not need to at this point?
I play every day. So yeah. I kind of just, the nice thing about the way that we tour is it's nonstop at times, but then when we're home, we're home. Like when I get home in September, like, I'm not picking up the phone or doing anything band related for 4 months, so that'll be nice. And when we have that time, I still play a lot. I just kind of try to record stuff, and I'm always working on stuff and always practicing and trying to learn new things. So yeah, I feel like I know some guys who like they get home and they don't want to pick up drumsticks at all or do anything. But yeah, I don't know. Like I got home last night from doing these music videos and stuff, and this morning, as soon as my girlfriend went off to work, I couldn't wait to get in here and stuff. And so yeah, I don't know, man. It's kind of just all I want to do.
So speaking of your girlfriend, she must be tolerant of noise and gear everywhere.
Oh yeah, she's a saint. Yeah, there's drums everywhere, and it's funny because I buy so much Gretsch stuff and I ramble about it. Unfortunately, she has to listen to it. She's familiar with all the different eras and stuff, so I'll be like, I'll come home and, oh, I found a Facebook Marketplace deal today. I bought a kit. She's like, oh, is it a round badge or a square badge?
Amazing.
So it's pretty cool.
So when I saw you, you had bought a couple snare drums or something. So is that just something you do on the road? You're just scouring for cool things to pick up?
Yeah, that's kind of a new thing for me. So
okay.
Actually, Chris Hawthorne, who we hung out with when I saw you in Pittsburgh, he kind of inspired that in me. I became friends with him a couple of years ago. I went and visited his shop when we were in Pittsburgh, and we were just talking, and he started sending me deals. Like he's always looking on Marketplace and Reverb and Craigslist and everything, and he sent me a couple of deals that he found in Florida in my area, and kind of helped me figure out, oh, this could be worth this could, so I started buying stuff half with the intent to resell it, but also like, oh, if this is cool, maybe I'll keep it. And then we were on tour, and I was like, man, this is a lot. There could be a lot of buying opportunities. So I started getting on Facebook Marketplace and looking, 3-4 days ahead of wherever we were going to be. I would just get on there and look, and yeah, funny enough, I found a few really good deals. So yeah, I picked up a few drums on that last tour.
Where do you put them? They just go under the bus?
So this is actually funny. Typically we're only in one bus, and so we have like a full bus, 12 people. But on this last tour, we were fortunate enough to have a band bus and a crew bus. So we had a lot of extra space. So we had a lot of bunks that just weren't being used. So we had this one bunk that everyone was referring to as the drum bunk, because it was just like by the end of the tour, there was like 3 snare drums in there, a random floor tom that I found at a pawn shop, a bunch of stuff. So yeah, they were living in the drum bunk.
So how many kits can we blame Chris Hawthorne for you acquiring?
And I have one on the way right now. That's partially his fault. So, as you know, he loves his Camco drums.
Yeah.
I just bought a Camco kit that I've got on the way to me now. So yeah, he's responsible for a part of my problem for sure.
So, I mean, I can't talk. I have a lot of gear, but why? What's the appeal for you for getting a bunch of different drums and seeking things out?
Well, it started with the Gretsch stuff. I endorse Gretsch, and I'm pretty outspoken that they're my favorite drums out there. And I love all the new stuff and all the stuff that they've built for me. But what introduced me to Gretsch was an 80s square badge kit. That was the first Gretsch kit I ever played, something like 10 years ago. And so once I was able to afford, to look around and maybe pick a couple of those up, that's kind of what started the whole thing. I started hunting for those, and I ended up with a pretty big collection of them. And, I have a lot of drums that kind of do the same thing, a lot of the same sizes and stuff. But what I find is when I get some of those new kits and you set them up and they all kind of do a different thing, it just makes me want to play, and it makes me want to record, and it makes me want to search for new sounds. And I don't believe that you have to spend money or buy several drum kits to do that or to achieve that feeling, but it definitely can help. So, yeah, I started getting all these different drums, and I just found that it just kind of inspired me and motivated me to get better and learn new things. And yeah, I kind of just got addicted to that feeling, I guess.
What is your current tour kit?
My current tour kit is a Gretsch USA Custom, 13x9, 16/16, 18/16, 24x16 kick. And I'm using the Gretsch solid steel snare, 14x6.5. I've had that kit out for about 5 years now. I love those drums, yeah, and they only get better with age. So I plan to keep that one out for a while and just let it get beat up and, build some character.
Has it needed any maintenance, like new spurs or anything like that over the years?
Nothing, man, nothing. The spurs are actually gross. It's funny you mentioned that, because our stinger likes to come over to the drum riser and drink water and spit it out. So my spurs, particularly on one side that he does that the most, it's all rusty and the chrome is kind of gross. But not to the point that we have to replace it yet. And the finish too, because they're lacquer. It's a piano black lacquer. So, and if you know about the Gretsch nitrocellulose lacquer, it's you could put your fingernail to it and it'll scratch. So, yeah, it's pretty. The finish is pretty beat up, but I love it, man. That's why I wanted painted drums. I'm I'm gonna get a paint job kit, take it out, and just let it get roughed up.
Now, do you think when it's time to retire that kit, you'll do something? You'll keep it sentimentally? I mean, what do you think you'll do with it at the end of its lifespan?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Might end up in a museum somewhere. Who knows?
As you can see, I do keep a lot of drums. So yeah, I'll probably keep them around. I really, really like that kit, even though I have I don't know, 6 or 7 Gretsch kits with a 13.9 and a 16/16. Can never have enough. So I'll probably keep it around, but who knows? We'll see.
What about cymbals?
Cymbals, Zildjian, and I have been rocking the 15-inch K fat hats. Those are newer to the Zildjian lineup, and I really, really like them. They're kind of they sit in between a K and an A, kind of remind me of a K Light, but also a new beat. So I've been really digging those. And then 19-inch A Custom Crash on the left, 20-inch K Custom Dark Crash on the right, 21-inch K Sweet Ride, 19-inch K China, and a 20-inch K Sweet Crash. We kind of just shook things up recently. We were using all A customs for the crashes for a while, and we were using the A Sweet Ride. But Matt, my tech, and I were talking about, let's just switch it up. We kind of got bored with using the same stuff over and over again, so put some of those Ks into the mix, and yeah, we really like it.
What about drum heads?
On the toms, coated Emperors on top and controlled sounds on the bottom, and snare, vintage Emperor on top, hazy Ambassador bottom, and then the kick is a coated Power Stroke 3 and a Power Stroke 3 on the front with a big center hole.
All right, I want to keep on the nerdy tip. Tuning. What is your approach to tuning for live?
Yeah, so I tune my toms very high. So not very high relative to, like a jazz guy or something, but for the type of music that we play, it's kind of, I kind of go with like the Bonham approach. When you sit behind my drums, they feel really high and kind of like, it kind of takes you by surprise, like doesn't really fit the bill for like a metal band. But when you stand out front of the drums, all of a sudden they sound huge, and they don't sound, they don't sound super high anymore. I'm sure you know how that is. It's like you sit behind the drums, they sound one way, and then out front it sounds completely different. So a lot of times people are surprised at how high I have them tuned up, but I really like the response that I get from the heads that way. And that's just the sound that I like. Sometimes I have to like walk the line between what I really like and what I'm digging at home and what I'm inspired by, and then what actually fits in with the band. So, sometimes it's like I gotta figure out a middle ground between those two. But yeah, I think they sound really good, and I think it actually works really well having them tuned up higher.
Is that a conversation you have with front of house, like how the drums sitting, or do they ever give you suggestions?
Totally. So fortunately, everyone kind of lets me do my thing. So Caleb, the singer of the band, he's kind of an audio nerd, and he's a drummer as well. So he has a pretty big, he has a strong opinion on what he wants the mix to sound like, and but he trusts me with the drum sound, and he's pretty much always satisfied with it. And our front of house guys sometimes will be like, oh, I'm getting a weird ring from this, or oh, the 18 sounds like the same pitch as the 16, or little things like that. But for the most part, everyone's pretty cool and lets me. So many front of house guys want you to like throw moon gels all over the toms and cotton balls in the drums and kill them, and I'm like, I can't. I know it might sound good out there, but the way it feels from behind the drums, I just hate it. I just love a wide open kit. So yeah, everyone's pretty cool about it, and aside from little pointers here and there, they kind of just let me do my thing.
Now, what about the kick drum? Because the style of music you're playing kind of requires a very sharp sounding kick. How do you tune it and treat it?
Yeah, so the kick drum, we don't tune it. I wouldn't say we tune it high like we do the rest of the drums, but it's definitely not like finger tight, which is how a lot of the guys in kind of the scene that we're in, a lot of the guys play with their kick drums almost finger tight, maybe just a little bit past finger tight. So we have it a little bit higher, but it's still pretty like clicky and punchy, for lack of a better term. And I think the center hole, since we have a Power Stroke 3 on both sides, it's pretty dead. Like you don't get that like papery tone that you might get with like an Ambassador on the front or something like that. And with the center hole especially, it's like it's a really quick note, just kind of in and out. So yeah, works for us. And we don't have much muffling in there either, just like a really, really small blanket or towel or something, but not too much.
Now, you were tweaking the snare tuning for like the first 3 songs at the Pittsburgh show.
Yeah.
What was going on?
Okay, so I said we use a coated vintage Emperor on snare. That's new for us. So for a long time, we were using the coated Emperor X, which is, like the thickest snare head that Remo makes. And I never liked that head, but I liked the durability and security of knowing that I'm not going to bust through a snare head ever, So that was nice. And also at that point, it's like, had to think about how many heads am I going to be ordering? What can we afford? It's a little less of an issue now. Like, fortunately, we're able to order a pretty big chunk of heads for every tour. So I talked to my tech and I was like, let's just try something else. And if it doesn't work durability wise, we'll figure it out. But like, I just want more open snare sound, kind of like what I play at home. And so we did the vintage Emperor, and with that head, it's like, I find that and on the snare drum that I'm using, it's a 10 lug drum. So it's like little tiny tweak, and all of a sudden you're in St. Anger town. So sometimes I'd get on stage and it'd be like a little loose. I'm like, sounds great, but I'm not getting the rebound I need, because I have to play a lot of fast stuff in the show, so the feel is pretty important too. And then I'll crank it, and I'm doing it so quick because like I know Caleb's talking points, like I know how much time I have. So he's talking, and I'm like, we're about to start the next song, So I'm not like doing it super carefully, and then we start the next song, and I'm like, I tuned it too high, and then I go back down. So I try not to do that. Like typically, if I get up there and it's not sitting exactly where I want it, I'll just kind of live with it. But yeah, that night that was a funny one, and I think you watched the first few songs from on stage, right? So
yeah.
So you had a front row seat to me just like panicking and trying to figure it out. Yeah, so sometimes that happens. Like, we're still kind of figuring out how to get the drum where we want it with that head on it. It really just durability wise, because the first day, the second day, it always feels and sounds great, and then once it starts, like, the coating starts fading a little bit, and maybe the center is pitting like a little bit, it starts getting a little wonky. But yeah, we try. I don't like to change snare head like every day or anything, so I try to just make it work.
What are you searching for when it's between too low and too high? Like, what's the sweet spot? What are you looking for?
Man, it's just the feel that I need. Like, when it goes too high, it still feels really good, but then it just sounds crazy in the ears, like it's just like full 311 like, and so I don't know, I guess I still want like a fat kind of medium rock sounding snare, but sometimes when we achieve that sound perfectly, we go and play one of the faster tunes, and I'm like, I can't. Like, I can, but it doesn't feel good rolling on this drum. When I have to do really fast singles or something like that. So yeah, I guess it's just like kind of a fight between the perfect sound and tone of the drum, and then the feel that we're trying to, that we're going for. So yeah, sometimes those two things, do not complement each other.
Does it change venue to venue, or at this point, is it pretty consistent?
Yeah. No, it changes venue to venue for sure. Yeah. Like some days, one day the snare will sound perfect, and then the next day we'll get in a room and it's the same drum, same sound, head has held up great, and it's just not there. We just got to change something. And it feels different too. I don't really know the science behind that, but man, sometimes the drums just don't feel the same, and I don't know, some days on that tour I was on the floor instead of being on a riser. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that had something to do with it. And then the guitars too, like sometimes the cabs are like a little behind me, and then the guitars are really, really loud, and then sometimes they're a little bit in front of me, and then I can't really feel or hear them as much, So there's just a lot of things that play into it. my approach is kind of like change as little as possible, because if you get into a good spot, it might be a little worse one day or a little better another day, but you're always kind of somewhere near where you want to be. We have guys who are like tweaking their ears mixed every day and stuff. And I'm like, tomorrow it's going to be a disaster. You know what I mean? Like, you're making it perfect for today, but tomorrow is going to be a nightmare. So I just kind of keep mine the same all the time. And yeah, that works pretty well.
Speaking of in-ear mix, I assume there's some click track coming through your ears. Like, what's your balance for everything?
Yeah, so my mix is kind of like, sorry, it's messing with this light here. My mix is kind of like a front of house mix, with drums at the front, click track really, really loud, and I have the vocals pretty loud as well. But the guitars are all like super balanced, and the drums aren't too hot. Like, I've heard a lot of guys who have whatever it is that they play like kind of blaring in their ears. But I like to hear the whole band pretty evenly. So, and we don't play like, we play the same show every night, but we have a little bit of improv in it here and there, and I never really play the same thing twice. So for that reason, I like to actually feel the band and kind of feel everyone's mood and how they're playing that night, and because it kind of dictates where I'll go for the show.
Did you always know you wanted to be a touring musician? When did this kick in for you?
I definitely didn't know that I always wanted to be a touring musician and like what that looked like. I started playing drums when I was 11, and pretty quickly I was just like, pretty much immediately I was just obsessed with it, and it was kind of all I wanted to do. And I used to spend probably, I don't know, 6 hours a day or so playing for the first like 5 years that I played. Didn't really do anything, didn't go out, didn't hang out with friends or anything. I stopped everything else I was doing. I was just playing drums all the time. And luckily my dad allowed me to do that. And yeah, what happened is I took some lessons with Aaron Gillespie, the drummer from Under Oath, when I was 13. And he was my favorite drummer, and definitely like my biggest inspiration at the time. And I was lucky enough to get some lessons with him. And after the first lesson, he kind of pulled my dad aside and just said some really complimentary things, and kind of said, "Look, your kid can definitely has a shot to do this, and you should support that and whatever." And I didn't hear the conversation, but I just remember leaving the drum shop and getting in the car, and my dad being a little bit like shaken up. And Aaron's a pretty intense dude. And I remember my dad being like, kind of flipping the switch and being like, kind of telling me, I think that this is what you should do, and I think you should go for it. And yeah, when I was a senior in high school, I got a call to play for this band called Being as an Ocean. And my local band at the time had done some shows with them when they were touring through Florida. And they called me and asked me to play drums for them. And so for my second semester of high school, I switched to online and went out on the road with them. And I toured with them for 2 years. That's how I met Caleb with Beartooth. We did a tour together, and I ended up quitting that band. And a few months later, Caleb called me, and then kind of here I am. So I didn't know that it would turn into this. I didn't know I'd be doing it for 10 years now. And even when I was doing the Being as an Ocean thing, I kind of felt like maybe this is a cool experience that you'll get to say you had, and do it for a couple years, and then kind of see where life takes you after this. But it just kind of kept spiraling into other opportunities, to the point where it just made sense to keep doing it. So I kept doing it. And of course, I love playing drums more than anything, man. So to have the opportunity to do it for a living is, amazing. It's something that I'm super grateful for. So yeah, short answer, no, I don't think that I knew that I was going to be doing this the way that I'm doing it. But I just kind of taking what life throws at me and running with it.
Amazing. So you've been touring for almost 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
How's your body holding up? That's a lot of hours on stage playing high energy music.
Yeah, man, it's starting to hurt. Like I just said, I started doing all this at a pretty young age, and I think when you're that young, you don't realize that the way you feel, the way I know I'm still young, but the way I felt at 17 is not the way I feel at 26. At 17, it was like I was eating whatever I wanted. I was eating 5 minutes before going on stage. Didn't affect me. Like, you know what I mean? Now it's like, okay, we play at this time. Okay, I'm not going to eat past this time. Okay, I'm going to start stretching at this time. I'm going to start, and I still hurt, So, yeah, it's like, it's pretty aggressive music, and I've definitely had to make some changes, in order to just kind of take preventative measure and hopefully, prevent serious injury, because I had some issues with my wrists and my arms, and so I adjusted my setup and started using smaller sticks. And I'm always kind of trying to do whatever I can to keep myself in the best shape for doing this. And but yeah, man, it's tough for sure, and it definitely takes a toll.
So you mentioned stretching. What is your typical show day kind of pre-prep? What do you do?
Yeah, so I don't do much like early in the day leading up to the show, but once we're a couple hours out from showtime, a big thing for me that I started doing a few years ago is just trying to relax and be calm. So probably about an hour and a half before we go on stage, I'll kind of stop being on my phone and I'm not really engaging in much conversation or anything, just kind of sitting around and taking deep breaths and just trying to get almost like in a meditative state. And then once we're, about 45 minutes out from showtime, I'll start stretching and warming up a little bit. But I don't really find that like playing on a pad really does much for me to get ready for a show. Maybe just banging around a little bit, but like I don't have like a specific routine that I like to do or anything. It's really just about getting my body ready to get up on stage and to play a long show. So yeah, a lot of stretching, full body stretching too. Like I find it's really important to get your legs stretched out, and because I've gotten on stage before and with all the double pedal stuff that I have to play, where my left leg has like locked up on me, where I have to like, dude, it's debilitating. It's almost like I have to like stand up and get rid of a cramp or something.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so after experiencing those kinds of things, I'm like, all right, you gotta make sure that you're super loose before getting up there. And yeah, so it's nothing too particular, but yeah, definitely a lot of importance on the stretching.
What about like hydration and diet? Are you like pretty particular about that now?
Yeah, diet is kind of out the window, man. I love food, and that's a problem for me. So I try on the road, and I'll kind of have stretches of like being on like a bender where I'm just kind of eating like an animal, and then I clean it for a few days. I'll try to get into a routine, and sometimes I'm successful, but usually not. But yeah, I definitely drink a lot of water. Definitely, I used to be like a Diet Coke fiend. Like I was drinking copious amounts of Diet Coke. Like I can't, however much you're imagining, multiply it by 10. Like it was ridiculous. So I stopped drinking Diet Coke almost a year ago. So now, just a lot of coffee and water, really, just black coffee and water. And yeah, I try to finish a full water bottle like within an hour before we go on stage, and then I'll drink like 3 or 4 while we're on stage. Sometimes I'll have Gatorade up there too, but typically I'm just sipping on water.
You ever had to pee in the middle of a gig?
Yeah, I haven't acted on it. We played a show, dude. We played a show in Germany earlier this year. So we did a Europe tour in March of this year, and Germany is like our biggest market in the world. Like we sell more tickets there than anywhere else. So the shows were pretty big for us, and we were all really excited about it and stuff. And I forget what city we were in, but it was the biggest. I want to say it was the biggest show of the tour. So we had like all this production, we had pyro and all kinds of stuff, and we're all really excited about it. And we're like halfway through the set, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna pee my pants off. It's bad. I gotta go so bad. So I just keep trying to like psych myself out. I'm like, I would look at the set list, and I'm like, you only got one more song to play, and I would just look at the next song, and then when that one was over, I'm like, just one more song. I kept making these little goals for myself. And when we walked off for the encore, I looked at the band, and I'm like, I have to go pee. Like I absolutely, there's no way I can make it through the whole encore. And unfortunately, the green room was in the back of the venue. So like, the stage is here, green room's over here. And the only way to get there was go up all these stairs, and you have to walk across this almost like a bridge to the back of the venue. So I sprinted up those stairs and over this like sketchy bridge thing over the crowd, and went to the green room, peed, came back. As soon as I got back, they were ringing out and walking on stage.
Oh, geez.
I made it back with like a second to spare. But yeah, sometimes it happens, man. I try to go to the bathroom like, 5 or 6 times. Like that's almost almost like a nervous tick before the show, like just going in and out of the bathroom and just trying to get out what you can.
What about other weird things that happen on stage? Stick breaks? I mean, are you always prepared for that kind of stuff? You ever had like a cymbal break on a gig or anything like that?
Oh yeah, we've had a ton of stuff happen. So I have a stick bag on the floor tom with like, several, way too many sticks in there. So I'm always prepared for that. And I used to play my sticks until they broke, but now I usually toss them, when they start feeling a little light and kind of funky, I'll toss them. So I don't really get to the point where they break. It still happens here and there, but not too often. But I would say, and we've definitely broken cymbals on stage. Like on the last tour, we broke 2 or 3, where we noticed it during a show, and I'll just kind of look at my tech, and he actually sits next to me he sits on like a backup cymbal case. So we've got a backup, like we have one backup of everything on the kit, right next to the drum riser at all times. So, because if I break like my left crash or something, I'll probably finish the show with it, or a China or whatever. But if I break the main ride or the main crash, it's so noticeable, and I'm living on those for like the whole show. So if I break one of those mid-show, we'll definitely change it. But I would say the craziest thing we've had happen was last year. We were playing in Raleigh, North Carolina, and in the middle of a song, my snare drum went from this perfect sounding medium high tuning to like as if I had put a big fast snare drum on it. Like it's just giving me nothing. And I'm like, first thought is I blew out the bottom head, because that is, I don't really go through like batter heads on snare. That's never really happened. So I'm like, I probably blew out the bottom head. So I'm playing, and I kind of reach my hand under to check, and I'm like, no, the bottom head's fine. The wires are fine. What's going on here? So keep playing, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I never figured it out. So like after that song, I took the took the snare off. He handed me my backup. We always have a backup snare ready to go as well. And we throw it on at sound check every day to make sure it's, kind of matching the other snare, so it's not too big of a deal when we throw it on. And we have all the mics for the snare, the 2 snare mics. We don't clip anything to the snare because we used to do that, and then we had to change snare once, and it was such a process to unclip it, get it on the new one. So we have everything on its own stand, so we can change snare really easily. Anyway, after the show, I'm like, we got to go look at this thing and see what happened. We go over, and I cracked the die-cast hoop on top.
Oh.
So, a little the little divot where the tension rod goes in just came clean off.
Oh, wow.
So essentially I was playing with a 7-lug snare.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that's probably the weirdest, most unexpected mishap we've had on stage. But yeah, other than that, we run a pretty tight ship, so we've been pretty lucky and nothing too crazy has happened.
Let's talk about you getting involved with Beartooth. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but how did you become a member of Beartooth, and what was that original? Was it just a touring gig originally, and then you became a member?
Yeah. So the same band I mentioned before, Beating as an Ocean, when I was playing drums for them, we did a Warped Tour in 2015, and we were on the same stage as Beartooth. Beartooth was a relatively new band, but it was just pretty obvious that something was kind of going on with them. Like every day when they were playing, they had these great crowds, and a lot of people from other bands coming over to watch them, and there was a lot of buzz around the band for sure. So I was watching them a lot, and just really enjoying their show. And Caleb, the singer of Beartooth, like I mentioned, he's a drummer as well. And on Warped Tour, your set times are different every day. You find out the morning of the show. So you wake up and find out, okay, you're playing at 11:30 a.m. today, or you're playing at 7 p.m. So you just wake up at I think everyone gets the set times at 9 a.m. or something. So every morning you kind of wander over to your stage, and I would set up my kit. And for me, even if we were playing at 5, 6 o'clock, I'd usually set it up kind of first thing when I woke up and just hang out over there and maybe jam on it a little bit quietly and talk to the other drummers and whatever. And we kind of always had these big drummer hangs going on. And funnily enough, Caleb was always kind of joining in with us. And I think a lot of us didn't know that he was a drummer, So he was coming over and hanging out with us a lot, and somebody would sit down and play a certain groove or chop, and then teach it to all of us and whatever, and all just kind of trading ideas. And him and I just kind of connected on initially we connected on this kit that I was playing because their sizes were ridiculous. It was a 14, 18, 20, 26, and I was young, and I think I was getting really into big drums, and I was like, I'm going to do a kit in bottom sizes. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to do 14, 18, 20. I'm going to have big drums on the tour, So I did that. It was really stupid. And he was like, oh man, I love 26-inch kick drums, whatever. And I think that's kind of how we started talking and whatever. And yeah, we would just trade ideas all the time and just kind of became buddies. And fast forward to that was summer of 2015, and at the end of that year, I quit Being as an Ocean. So I was kind of tired of the 10 months a year touring, and just the way that ship was running, it just wasn't for me, and I just wasn't really enjoying it anymore. So I quit, and I went and did some recording work and stuff, and then Caleb called me in March of the next year, 2016. So he called me and he's like, look, we the spot's opening up. We need a new drummer. So can you do this tour? And that's all it was originally. It was like, we need someone to do this tour. And I kind of knew they don't have somebody. So if this tour goes well, this should turn into a permanent thing. And I was a fan of the band. And so I was like, definitely super excited to get that call. So yeah, I did that whole year with them, 2016. And then we you know, I knew it was permanent at that point, but the band wasn't putting out, you know, the band had just put out a new album and stuff that was already marketed with the four of them and all that. So he was like, look, when we're working on the next album, you know, we'll talk about how we can structure this to make it a full-time thing. And that's what happened. So 2016 and 17, I was a touring member, but, you know, doing the same job as all the other guys. And then in 2018, we kind of, you know, made it more of an official thing, I guess, kind of publicly. So yeah, but nothing really changed because it's kind of like a hired gun gig anyway. Because Caleb writes all the music and records all the music, and then the band we're just kind of there for the live show. But you know, we take, you know, the photos together and stuff. I don't think he likes to market it as like a solo thing. You know, he wants it to be a band. So yeah, so that's really the only thing that changed. But yeah, so I've been playing with them for a little over 7 years now. And yeah, it's been great.
What are the specific demands of Beartooth for you?
Yeah, so it's really just kind of being there for everything that the band's got going on outside of making the records, you know. So all the touring, all the shows, like, you know, obviously I do all of that. And then, you know, like I just got back from this trip where we shot these music videos and some other stuff. So anything that's got the full band in it, you know, I've got to be there for that. So yeah, it's a lot, man. It's a busy gig, and you know, especially the last couple of years, I think post COVID, we're kind of making up for lost time a little bit. So it's been super busy, but it's good, man. You know, we have a really good we run a really smooth operation, and after doing it for so long, you know, you kind of work out the kinks and figure out what works and what doesn't. So yeah, I think we're in a good place, and yeah, everything feels good.
So what's your approach to learning the songs? So you say Caleb does all the stuff in the studio, so you honor his original part. Is there any flexibility and leeway once you get this on the road? Does it evolve?
Yeah, so to be honest, there's kind of like unlimited flexibility and leeway, which is kind of crucial for me because I know my role here, and I knew that I was the live guy when I accepted this offer, right? Like I knew I wouldn't be playing on the records or writing or anything, and I'm cool with that. But definitely from the first tour, it was like he kind of gave me free range to do my thing, and that's what makes the gig so enjoyable for me, is that I'm not on the records. I don't get to get my like creativity out there, but when we play live, you know, I can't remember the last time he looked at me and said, "Oh, could you play it more like this, or could you do this?" He kind of just trusts me with it. And I think that we have similar enough drumming styles that his parts and then what I do with them, it works really well. So yeah, it's kind of unlimited flexibility, and yeah, he lets me play the stuff however I want. And my approach to learning it is I really like to learn songs like as a listener first, if that makes sense. So I know some people like to like immediately chart the parts out and do that kind of thing, but I like to just listen to it and kind of learn the lyrics and be able to sing along to it as if I'm a fan of the band. And through that process, the drum parts kind of just second nature, just get ingrained in you, you know. And then when I sit down to play it, typically things will come to me that he didn't do. Like, you know, I'll keep the main groove the same, you know, and I'm not completely changing parts, but I kind of play the fills however I want, and I'll, you know, little intricate parts that he'll do, I'll kind of vary them a little bit, just to make them more comfortable for me and kind of suit my style a little more. And yeah, he's really cool about it, man. It's honestly like my favorite part about the gig. It's just that he trusts me, and kind of lets me be myself on the songs.
I noticed he was kind of egging you on a little bit on stage. Is that's a typical night where you'll get some looks or like some cheers?
yeah, totally. So I'll play some nights. I'll keep it. Like I said, I never really play the same thing twice, and maybe not all, but most of the fills and stuff are kind of just improvised night to night, and so that can kind of vary based on like the mood. Some nights I'll keep it a little bit more, straight ahead and not too many crazy fills or anything, and then other nights I'm feeling really good and want to try some new stuff, and I'll kind of throw it in there. And yeah, sometimes he'll get really excited about something. Like I'll play something that I've never done before, and I'll see him kind of
that's what I saw. Yeah.
We kind of look back at me, and sometimes he'll say it too, like he'll be like, "Oh, he's feeling it tonight," or stuff like that. So it's just really fun, and it's encouraging. It makes you better because it's like, like that's kind of what you want from a leader. It's like, they find something that you do well and kind of, encourage it. And so that's really cool, and that's really fun. And sometimes he'll like look back, like if he's really feeling it, he'll look back and just be like, "Go off," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, and sometimes he'll do it at a part where I'm like, "Dude, this part is not a go off part," but I'll do it. And then the rest of the band's like, "Oh my God," like just trying to keep on the click. So yeah, we have fun with it, man. And, we don't take anything too seriously. And, yeah, got to keep it light up there.
So one thing that really impressed me with your playing was how fluid you are, even though at times you're wailing. Like fluidity at higher velocities. Is that just something that came natural, or have you kind of shedded that skill set?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think that comes from, when I first started playing, the first like several years that I played, it was all about just like hitting really hard and playing really aggressively. I was always playing on hardcore. That's kind of what my focus was on. And then probably sometime like, I don't know, 2011, 2012, like all of this kind of hip hop drumming started becoming really mainstream, and kind of like almost, I guess, what people call like Instagram drumming now. But at the time, it was like these gospel chops videos and these Thomas Pridgen and Aaron Spears and Tony Royster and all those guys. And even though I was playing rock music, I always loved the way that those guys played. So I started learning certain things that they do and kind of taking chops from them and incorporating them into the rock stuff that I was playing. So I kind of tried to mesh the two. And yeah, I remember once when I was a kid, like I was copying whatever drummer was my favorite at the time. I was just doing exactly what they were doing. I would set my drums up like them. I would, and I remember my dad telling me, like, "That's great, but instead of copying that one guy and whoever you're into at the time, why don't you try to kind of combine all of those and make your own sound?" I thought that was really cool advice. And yeah, I remember like that really resonating with me. And so I tried to just kind of do that and combine all these different things that I was a fan of that you don't typically see together. And yeah, I think the way that I play now is kind of the result of that.
Is your dad a musician?
He's not, but it's crazy because I could tell all these stories about my dad and people always think that he's a musician, but he's not. But he's just a big music lover, just a wise guy, so often he'll say something and I'm like, it feels like a famous quote or something, what I mean? But yeah, it's super musical household, like not playing wise, but growing up there was always music blasting. And my dad's just he's just very with it. Like he introduced me to, Smashing Pumpkins at the same time that he introduced me to Jay-Z. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
He listens to everything. Like, there's not much that he doesn't listen to. And he was always very ahead of the curve with that kind of stuff. Still is. And yeah, so just a eclectic music taste, and I think that had a huge influence on me.
Speaking of which, who are your biggest influences? Top 5 or so.
Jimmy Chamberlain, Elon Rubin, Taylor Hawkins. I feel like I gotta throw like a pop hip hop guy in there. Maybe Aaron Spears. I got that Aaron Spears had a DVD that I got when I was a kid that I learned a lot from that. I watched that thing like 1,000 times. I got one more. Dave Grohl.
Solid.
Yeah.
All very fluid players except for Grohl, but he's got some fluidity to him too in his own way.
Yeah. Yeah, Elon Rubin I find that he kind of does that too, where he's always hitting pretty hard, but he moves around so smooth, man. Like that guy, the way he flows around the kit, I've never seen anything like it.
So what are you listening to these days?
Lately, I've been obsessed with this band, Tedeschi Trucks Band. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're kind of like a jam band, but they have 2 drummers, and I just went and saw them last week, and pretty incredible show. So I've been listening to them a lot. I'm always listening to a lot of hip hop. That's kind of what I grew up listening to the most. My dad liked a lot of hip hop stuff, so I listened to a lot of 90s and early 2000s hip hop stuff. And what else? Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of been the 2 main things lately. I've been really, really digging this Tedeschi Trucks Band. Really good stuff, and really, really different from what I do with Beartooth. I don't listen to a ton of heavy stuff anymore. I still like it and I still appreciate it, but mainly, man, like when I come home, I'm like, like right now, I got like a super basic setup going on, and I've got these like tea towel things on the drums and super dead sounds, and I'm always just trying to do different stuff because I'm so comfortable playing the heavier stuff, and so I like to try and get out of my comfort zone and learn new things, and the softer playing is kind of what I'm going for right now, because it's really, really challenging for me.
How do you approach practicing? Are you very specific about it? Do you play along the records? What is your typical practice session?
I just kind of play. Sometimes I'll play along to records, but not too much anymore. I get pretty bored doing that. But I'll just kind of come in here and just sit down and just start playing. And sometimes I'll stumble upon something that feels like a cool idea, and I'll record it really quick, and so I don't forget it, and then kind of run with it and work on it and see where it goes. And a lot of the times when I come in here, I kind of have something in mind that I want to try, something that I saw in a video somewhere or something. So like a few years ago, I got really inspired by all this Latin drumming, and so I started trying to learn all that stuff. So I'm working on that, and a couple months ago, I was looking into these. I got super into the Gretsch round badge stuff, and this is an example of here inspiring me. I got super into the Gretsch round badge stuff, and I really wanted a kit, so I got one, and it's a 12-14-20, so not really suitable for me to slam on. And I set it up, and like it just made me want to play jazz. But I don't play jazz. I don't know how to do that, So I started just trying to explore that, and see where it takes me. So yeah, it's usually pretty loose and not very particular. But I just try to have fun with it. I used to be very methodical about it. And same thing with the touring, man. I used to be very methodical about it, and like I want to do this, and that's going to result in me getting this gig, and I want to do this. And now you get to this point where it's like, I just want to enjoy it. I just want to have fun, and that's how I feel about playing too. I want to be the best I can, but I want to enjoy every part of the journey to getting there,
That's very wise. Wise beyond your years. Must run in the family. Well, we're at the end of the hour, so I always end with a similar question, which ends up maybe being 3 questions. But what was your first snare drum?
Man, my first snare drum was, I think it was a groove percussion. So I'll try to make this relatively quick, but long answer, the reason I started playing drums, my dad lectured my brothers and I that we need to find a hobby. He's like, you need to find something to do. You need to find something to invest your time into. I want each of you to pick something, and we'll figure it out. I'll support you doing it. And I was watching the Nick Cannon movie Drumline while he said this to me. And I was like, I want one of those drums with things on the bottom. He's a snare drum? Yeah. So he got me a snare drum from Sam Ash. I think it was a group percussion. So I started with just that. But I took like full kit lessons right away. So I never played like marching or anything. So that's my first snare drum.
Wild. Yeah, I didn't ask you about why you started playing drums. So you took lessons right away from day one?
So I got that snare drum for my 11th birthday, which is in August. And then my dad was like, see how you like it, and I was just banging around on it, aimlessly and bothering everybody and making noise. And my brother got a guitar. That's what he chose. And we went to a music shop to get the guitar restrung because, we didn't know how to do that. So we went to a music shop to get the guitar restrung after a few months of me having my snare drum and having his guitar. And the guy at the shop was like, hey, we offered lessons here. You guys are interested. And I was like, do you guys do drum lessons? So I signed up for drum lessons, and it was like regular full kit stuff. And my dad was like, look, let's do a few lessons, and if you like it, I'll try to get you a full kit, So I think I did like 3 or 4 lessons, and I was like obsessed. So for Christmas, 4 months after I got that snare drum, for Christmas, I got a full kit. And I took lessons for like the first 2.5 years, I think, 2.5, 3 years of playing.
What was that first kit?
It was a Mapex, some cheap Mapex, like bass, made of basswood, and it's funny too. I still have it. It's funny. It has really deep toms for something. Like it's like a 13x10, a 12x9. But it's actually a really good sounding kit. Yeah, I still have it. My dad and I it was a blue sparkle, but my dad and I took the wrap off and did like a natural stain on it. And it's at my dad's house collecting dust. But, I figure one day I'll be happy I have it.
Yeah, I got rid of my first kits, and I think about them often. Never should have did it.
Yeah.
What about cymbals? That's something I don't ask many people. What was your first cymbals?
My first cymbals were Zildjian ZBTs, 13-inch hi-hats, 14-inch crash, and an 18-inch crash ride.
Oh, yeah.
Big guys.
All right, so then what was your first, professional drum purchase that you're like, I need to get something good? What was it?
Does the Pearl Chad Smith snare drum count?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yes. That was the first thing is like when I think I had been playing for maybe a year or so. And I played a lot, like right away. I know I've heard a lot of people where the story is like they get a kid and it takes a bit for them to get into it. But I was playing like nonstop. So, fortunately my dad was really, really supportive. And the snare drum on that Mapex kit, like the kit was great, but you know how it is. That was the type kind of kit that came with stands and everything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like came with hardware and all that. And that snare drum was the first thing that I was like, okay, I need something better than this. I just feel like I'm gonna break it, So Yeah, my dad got me the Pearl Chad Smith. I think it was steel 14x5 snare drum. I traded that, and I really regret it.
That's a good drum.
It's a good drum, man. And I traded it for like a sling. I got like right when I got into vintage drums, I didn't have any money, and I traded it for like a 15-inch Slingerland marching snare that I thought was really cool. That I never even ended up doing anything with.
Oh, and you can find those anywhere now.
At the time, I was like, "Oh, it's a Slingerland. Like, it's vintage. You know, this is such a good deal for me." But I kind of got ripped off.
Dope. Well, that's all the questions I have for this. Thank you.
Awesome.
And that is it for this week's episode. Please like, share, subscribe, give us a review, a 5-star rating. Anything you do can help spread this show around to more drummers around the world. And we thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.